Friends, we are live yet again. Rusty back with you here. It is CFLW. We are going live on this Monday, just a little bit past 7 o'clock. Hope you're doing well. Kind of plan to go on live regardless at this point in time. Normally we call this CFLW the show, but there's a lot to get into. And obviously we've had some strong and severe storms that have moved across our area. We've had in the last hour or two some really heavy thunderstorm activity along the western part of the state. But I also have new information to pass along with our development area tropically east of the state. So there's a lot to get into. Great to see you guys. For many of you, hopefully a second time today. Once again, CFLW is sponsored by the Lean Law Firm of Central Florida, your hometown homeowners insurance attorneys. It is storm season, friends. A storm moves into your area. You get any kind of home damage, even burst pipes. You've even been in an auto accident. They can walk you through every step of the insurance claim process. Go to leanonmelaw.com if you guys would like more information. As always, I want to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comments section below where you're viewing from, what has been happening with the weather, just like William jumping in from the Melbourne area. Great to see you guys. The thumbs up in the chat, all that helps out. So first thing I want to do here is kind of break down how things have played out since maybe I last saw you guys over the last couple of hours here. We've really seen those storms move along the west coast. And we actually even had a very brief tornado warning. Nothing confirmed out of that, but we've had very severe storms moving across portions of Tampa, Brandon, Gibsonton, Ruskin. That was a severe thunderstorm warning that was in effect for winds of 60 miles an hour and some 3/4 inch size hail. It's now been replaced by a special weather statement, but it's a very wide special weather statement. So in our far eastern areas, look how monstrous this special weather statement is. Let me give the details on that. It's going to be for DeSoto, Manatee, Central or Coastal Hillsborough, Polk, Coastal Pasco, Highlands, Inland Pasco, Coastal Hernando, Inland Charlotte, Coastal Manatee, Pinellas, Hardy, and Hillsborough counties. This one's going to go until 7:30, guys. So for the next 24 minutes, strong thunderstorm along a line from Lake Placid on over to MacDill Air Force Base, Weeki Wachee, and moving south at 20, winds of up to 40 miles an hour. So this is just a big swath of heavy rain and storms. It was more intense a little bit earlier in the 5 to 6 o'clock hour, and you can see some of the more intense activity moving up the Nature Coast off of coastal Hernando and Citrus and even up to Levy County. Still a couple of special weather statements right along the Big Bend area as well. So that was the storms that developed right across the inland sections, right across I-4 and areas to the east, and then have worked their way off to the south and to the west. So that's kind of that. By the way, I've got myself a little bit of coffee this evening. Hope you guys don't mind that. Hey Kevin, how you doing? Kevin says he's got some good rain in Lakeland and had some good rain. How you doing, Jay? Good to see you again, my friend. Hope you're doing well. Jay always dropping down some Spanish words of wisdom weather-wise, and we appreciate that as well. So again, this is what's currently happening. Now, in the short term, things are a little bit quieter. We could still see some redevelopment here across I-4, and we've had a couple of showers try and move along the East Coast as well. As a matter of fact, let me go to this composite view of the radar, and you guys can see that just a little bit clearer right now as well. So let me drop off the radar here. So Brevard County, couple of coastal showers trying to skirt back in, right? But relatively speaking, all the action right now is along US 19 and even west of I-75. Continuing to push down, Bradenton, Sarasota, kind of the next spots that could get some of this heavy storm activity. Again, we had severe thunderstorm warnings, but they're back down to special weather statements. Now, this, of course, is all developing on the western edge of what is now Invest 93L. All right. We talked about it in the early afternoon live stream that this area was looking much more impressive, and the National Hurricane Center feels the same way. So now, my friends, we have Invest 93L, right? Not a tropical depression yet, but signs of development here. All right. We now have a low-level center. Pressure's 1,016 millibars. We did note one area of 1,014. Regardless, it's a very weak area, right? But that being said, all signs point to this also trying to wrap up a little bit more. All right, and bring back on the visible satellite imagery here for you guys so you can just see that. We have drier air to the north right now, right? And you can see that spin coming back on shore, right? So that's where the invest area kind of X marks the spot, if you will, but it's already trying to drift off towards the west. And this is going to slowly work its way towards the east coast. Now, the interesting thing is, I was doing a lot of work behind the scenes, so I haven't had a chance to look at, there should have been an update. No, they haven't done one yet. Okay. I thought they might come out with a 7 o'clock update. Not to keep an eye on it, because the last one they issued was 110. Whether they've upped the chance of development. It's 30% right now, okay? 30% chance of development, and you can see how this yellow area is now east of us. Now the Hurricane Center is fully saying that there's at least the opportunity that this could become a tropical depression before it moves along our east coast, right? 30% chance of development overall. Still more likely, this is more broad and disorganized as it moves across the peninsula and into the eastern Gulf, but it's not out of the question we actually get TD number 4 to form before we actually see this move back on shore. All right? Let's take a look at a couple of different presentations here. I'm going to bring on, let's see here. Let's bring on the visible satellite imagery. So this is just going to be the visible satellite imagery, all right? And I'm going to drop the yellow area because we can see where that is. But you can clearly see that on this visible satellite imagery, we have a much more organized system. That's why we now have an invest. Yes, it's still very dry on the northern side of this, but we've had a good flare-up of convection on the southern and the southwest side, and you can almost see this banding really beginning to develop over the peninsula with these brighter, higher cloud tops. In order for us to get an actual tropical depression, we've got to take some of this convection and wrap it on the north and northwest side and fill in those areas that are still dry. When I show you the water vapor imagery, you can see that, right? The red on the water vapor imagery is drier air. Now, at the beginning of this loop, right, there's a little bit more entrenched, still battling, big battleground, but we'll see if some of this that's just due east of where that center is actually tries to wrap itself back around. On this water vapor imagery, the greens and the blues are your more moisture-laden air, and that's really what we're seeing. I mean, look at that activity here right over the state, all right? So the bottom line is, my friends, is that this is a very, very active forecast, at least through tomorrow night, if not even early on Wednesday. We're going to see a flood threat. We're going to see strong to severe storms. We're going to see heavy tropical downpours, and we're going to see some gusty winds, right? I don't expect this thing to go crazy before it gets to our area, but impacts, absolutely. Get back over to the chat. Hey, Jaden, how you doing? In the house from Aruba. As always, appreciate you joining. Appreciate you guys joining us here again. Thanks for those who drop a comment in the chat. I appreciate that. Even if you just want to say hi, I appreciate you guys doing that as well. And again, please remember that we're a live only channel. So only live when there's things that we got to talk about. There is a very small flash flood warning I want to mention as well. It's going to be for the Plant City area. Goes for the next 16 minutes. It's a really, really small area. It's really even east of Seffner and Brandon, but it shows you the locally heavy rainfall that has already moved in with some of the activity that we've seen for today. And as you would imagine, as this activity moves offshore, you're getting special marine warnings to come about it as well. I'm going to bring back on the wind gusts. See what we've picked up here. You know, these were the wind gusts of the last couple of hours. So we've had a 43 in Zephyr Hills, a 39 in Spring Hill. We had a 39 in the St. Pete area. Again, very solid storms, marginally severe, mainly special weather statement kind of winds. Even back behind where we had a little bit of activity earlier today, Orlando International MCO had a 32 mile an hour wind. Inverness, Citrus County, inland Citrus County had a 41 mile an hour wind. So, you know, that is exactly what I'm expecting for most of the area as these cells continue to spiral in from east to west, is to get those kinds of winds that could lead to some flash flooding, you know, and ultimately by tomorrow, the flash flooding might end up being the most significant hazard that we have to watch out for. Let's take a live look to our cameras. Hey, Clyde, how you doing? South Carolina in the house. Hi, Amy, Ormond Beach. Good to see you. Blue Goose has his Cafe Bustelo. It's just a K-cup for me, my friend. The wife drinks the Cafe Bustelo from time to time. St. Augustine, cloudy and quiet. Therese from Kissimmee, good to see you as well. Quiet now, yeah. Listen, with what we had earlier, we'll take a little bit of quiet here. But again, this live look from Winter Garden, looking back off towards the west, a little bit of a mackerel sky, but mainly just kind of fairly gray and overcast. Again, you know, all the heaviest activity is pushed away from the metro Orlando area, so we're left over with a lot of this. But again, you know, at any point in time, later tonight, overnight, tomorrow morning, the next heftier round could be moving in. So, you know, enjoy the respite while it's here, but there's more to come. There's no doubt about it. Looks like we lost the Conway cam very briefly. I'll let it see if it'll pop back up. There we go. Just takes a second sometimes to reconnect. And that's a beautiful shot from Conway. Conway had some good wind earlier, but missed the brunt of the storm activity. We are looking off towards the east. So in the very far distance, we can start to see a few of those showers even off of our coast. Otherwise, again, more kind of mid and high level deck of clouds there. Should be beautiful as we get towards sunset a little bit later. And then in Disney, things are looking a little bit better here as well. You're a good boy. Yes, you are. Love it. Magic Kingdom, just 1 mile away from this shot. So we always take a look at this camera. Obviously, the attractions, that we know it's an area where there's always people out and about, and a lot of tourists, a lot of people who aren't from this area. So we keep a very vigilant eye there. Again, this camera very close to the Magic Kingdom and the Epcot area, SeaWorld, places like that. And we are looking off to the south, again, as those storms kind of haul away from the area right now. Hey, Blue Goose, yeah. It's the easiest way to do it, isn't it? Just that little perk. I don't want to slurp, by the way, so apologize if I do, but just a little pick me up here as we're talking. This is kind of basically a conversation between us right now. You know, I wanted to come on at this point in time anyway. Obviously, I was on live earlier because of the heavier storms. You know, we've had a little bit of that in the last couple of hours out west. Again, we actually did have one tornado warning. It was very brief, though, very brief. If we take a look at and we'll get into some of the sub stuff I want to talk about as well. This is going to be your storm reports from today, right? So in the Tampa area, they had a 47-mile-an-hour wind gust at the cruise terminal. In St. Pete, they had a 48-mile-an-hour wind gust at the ASOS site there. And then this is the flooding rain, right? It's crazy to think about, but in Plant City, they are reporting like 8 to 9 inches of rain. It's wild. Let's see these. I mean, these are 3 different reports, right? Home weather station on Wiggins Road had 9.3 inches of rain. A home near Smith Riles Road had 8.76. And here's another one in Kilgore Road, 8.66. So within a very small, and that's actually like a mile less radius, you had 3 reports between 8.5 and 9+ inches of rain. Crazy. That, again, is not out of the realm of possibility, and we just saw it. This is what I'm talking about. This kind of tropical moisture that's in play, right? Where you can get those kinds of very isolated but locally heavy rain and flash flooding. So again, that is exactly why they are under a flash flood warning. And that's also why this flash flood warning is so small. I mean, one storm just trained across that area, meaning it redeveloped and it redeveloped and it redeveloped. And when you have all of this tropical moisture in play, it's a possibility. Remember, not only do we have this area, this surface area of low pressure, but we also have mid-level rotation, which is feeding into it and allowing there to be a lot of divergence aloft. So you get convergence at the surface and divergence aloft. There's a lot of lifting air, is what I'm trying to say. And that lifting air could be producing some ample rainfall totals in the coming days. Again, this is what it looks like in the broad spin. And you can see even some of the showers picking up right now over portions of the northwest Bahamas. Heavy, heavy rainfall, by the way, in southern portions of the state as well. All right. These are just the reports of the last couple of hours, right? Looks like we had one other report here. Let me pause that real quick. Let's see here. Let's dump that for a second. Where was that other report that I saw? Right here. So Polk County, Auburndale, Winter Haven area had a 52-mile-an-hour wind there, just 2 miles southwest of Lake Alfred at 451. So there you go. Gainesville, I know, had some good gusty winds as well. Not horrible, 36. East of there, tree limbs and power lines reported down. There you go. Okay, so let's talk about how this is going to play out between now and at least tomorrow night, if not even Wednesday. We'll take a look at some of the overall impacts I expect that we're going to see. We'll also take a look at some of the hazards that you should expect as well. So we'll start off actually with the risk for severe storms, okay? Today, it is a marginal risk, a 1 out of 5 on the scale, right? And the Weather Service, or excuse me, the Storm Prediction Center even put out a remark earlier that there was a 20% chance of a severe thunderstorm watch for western areas. Never materialized. They never pulled the trigger on it, but it gives you an idea of as this system is moving into our direction, there will be the opportunity for some strong to severe storms. Hey, private caller, how you doing, by the way? NASA sunny and clear. Thank you very much. Pretty dust. Yeah, you know, the dust is at least at this point in time, and I do the Media Mundo Caribbean channel as well. The next concentration, the next plumes of Saharan dust are not working their way this far north. We might get a little bit of an overlap from it, but it's all mainly staying in the Caribbean. Now, tomorrow, right now, the Storm Prediction Center just has your generalized risk of storms, but this is kind of a day of thing where almost every day, you know, the Storm Prediction Center ups the risk the day of. So it's not going to shock me if just like today, we're going to fall under this relatively marginal risk. And again, not going to be a lot of concentrated storm activity, but there will be an opportunity to have some of that. And then for your Wednesday, and again, I just have this tropical layer on, so those are going to pop on. It's the same situation, all right? Now, excessive rainfall is going to become a thing. Today, it's the generalized green risk, which is the lowest, but it is an excessive rainfall risk, okay? And notice that it basically includes the entire peninsula. We saw some flash flooding already near the Plant City area. What it looks like from here, let's see here. There's the day 2 risk. So tomorrow, widespread again. And by the way, it's the 5 to 10% ring. What that means is within this area, we get up to a 10% chance of meeting flash flood criteria within this area somewhere, okay? Day 3 starts to improve across I-95, but even on Wednesday, we could still see some excessive rainfall, and then you see how this spreads right across I-10, because likely this system is going to be getting stronger and stronger as we go deeper into the week. So the excessive rainfall is another situation that we got to watch out for as well. I'm going to look over here real fast and see if there's even a reason to bring up our... So at this point in time, and I'm a little surprised, but there are no like beach statements or rip current advisories as of yet. I feel like more than likely the National Weather Service offices will begin to issue those either later tonight or tomorrow. But, you know, if you live along the East Coast, you got to get prepared for the fact that, you know, this developing system is going to obviously kick up surf and sea conditions in a pretty big variety, right? It's going to be a big issue here across that area. So yeah, let me loop this back up for you guys. Tell you what, let's take a look at our cameras. And then I also want to show you the models as well. So let's go back over to Winter Garden if you guys are just tuning in. That's what's going on in the western side of Orange County. Things are a little bit quieter at this point in time. But again, you know, got to watch out. More redevelopment is coming, no doubt about it. We're going to see additional showers and storms that'll be working its way through the area. Just for right now, at least, it's a little bit quieter. Gray overcast skies. We see that, you know, and again, heavier tropical downpours are possible here. To Conway, For some reason, it's taking like a couple of seconds to reconnect, but it should be there. There it is. Boy, what a gorgeous shot there. You can see, a little bit of pink in the sky in the distance there. It's a neat shot. The air is very still. The air is very heavy, right? Can you guys, you feel that weight in the atmosphere right now as that low is deepening and all the tropical moisture is in play? Back out to the attractions at this point in time for you too. All right, so back over to the weather computer. Just need to reset the shot here. Let's talk about how this could likely play out between now and Wednesday morning, all right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up by the way, my system, we can do a lot of different things here. We can play around a lot. These are your current wind gusts. Again, nice little 43 there as well. These are your current temperatures, 70s and 80s. Current winds. Notice how we do have still an east coast, or excuse me, a push of west winds along the west coast. And then along the east coast, obviously, you're starting to see these winds curl up a little bit more near that invest. But what I really want to get to here is the HRRR model. It's the high resolution rapid refresh. If you joined me for the earlier live stream, the HRRR model, it's not a very good tropical model, okay? Right? If we had an actual hurricane out here, this is not a model that I'd be showing you guys for intensification and movement of a fully developed tropical system. But this is still a broad, sloppy system, and in a local pattern, we can take a look at the showers and storms moving through. Okay, so I would never say, hey, base the track of this system off of the HRRR model, because it's just not that kind of model. But for localized convective thunderstorms, it absolutely is a fantastic model. And that's really what I want to talk about for right now. So take a look at it between now and Wednesday evening. So I'm gonna let this loop up one more time, and then we'll get back to the beginning. First of all, again, you can see the storms lined up here. The model's a little bit too far inland, but relatively speaking has a pretty good handle. Like, there's not rain in Orange County right now, and at 7 o'clock it said it was. But as we go through the remainder of the evening, there's the opportunity that if you live along our East Coast, Brevard County, Volusia County, Indian River County, that we could start to spiral in additional heavier rain. So once again, don't be shocked if you hear the, pretty good wind freshen up, if you hear the rain on the roof and you hear the thunder crack into the distance as well. This could easily spread back over our area in the morning hours and just become extremely widespread by tomorrow afternoon. Again, this is all ahead of and following the true center of circulation, which late tomorrow should begin to move towards our East Coast. But all of this activity is still ahead of where that low would be. But look at 6 o'clock tomorrow. Look how widespread the HRRR model has the extremely heavy rain, rich tropical moisture, and the opportunity for some flooding, especially low-lying areas, ponding on roadways, but true flash flooding is not out of the question with this system. And because we do have rotating storms coming through, another thing that's a not non-zero chance is the opportunity, that is a non-zero chance, is the opportunity for some isolated tornadic activity or water spouts. Again, it's not going to be a big chance, but when you have a developing tropical system and you have inherent spin in the atmosphere, it's something I keep a very vigilant eye on, especially towards the coastline when you have the friction difference between the smoother surface of the water and moving inland, or vice versa coming offshore as well. You do typically get some spin ups in that environment. So have to monitor that, right? And then we'll just see how it plays out. Not going to be a big situation or scenario, but got to be part of the equation as we roll through tomorrow. Now, by tomorrow evening at 10 o'clock, you can start to see the spin begin to exit into the Eastern Gulf, and from there it picks up in intensity. And again, the HRRR model is not going to be the best to look at that, but that's where the center would be. But what I really want to show you is behind this, at least through Wednesday, obviously with the counterclockwise winds, you get the south winds coming up, and now you get additional deep tropical moisture coming in with the southerlies, and it's one more day of potentially heavier rainfall. It may not be as widespread as what we had on Tuesday for tomorrow, for Wednesday, but there will still be locally heavy rainfall coming into the forecast on Wednesday as well. So probably at least 36 more hours, if not 48 more hours of direct impacts before this system works its way off towards the west. Get back over to the comments. No rain all day in Palm Bay. Richard, have you not had any rain? There's been a couple of spots. No, Richard, I don't think it's stalling. It's really just beginning to develop. Now, that being said, the invest itself is only moving at around 3 miles an hour, but it's more of just, it's trying to consolidate and find a low-level center. But everything that I've seen on the models, and I've looked at basically all of them, now that we have an invest, we'll start to run more tropical models, like the HWRF and the HMON models and all of that, but I've been looking at the ICON model and the GFS and the NAM and the HER. They all have a pretty decent progression off towards the west, right? You know, again, we're not a very, east to west. There's not a lot of distance here in Florida, right? 90 plus miles in a couple of spots, but it's not going to take long for this to get back into the Gulf, right? It probably is so short-lived over land, if you will, that as this tries to develop, even moving across the state is probably not going to inhibit its overall development. But everything that I've seen today does raise the bar for the opportunity for this to develop, right? Again, tropical depression number 4 and/or tropical storm Dexter. That's the next named storm on the list. We have ripped through 3 named storms. You add them all up, they haven't added up to a ton of days and impacts, thankfully, but we've had 3 named storms. Hey, Annie, how you doing today? Hope you're doing well. Lightning and tornadoes possible Tuesday. Yes. Tornado threat's low, but it's not non-zero, right? But it's not zero. Why do I keep saying that? It's like I got a brain fart or something. The tornado threat is low, but it's not zero. That's what I'm trying to say. The inherent rotation of the system brings about an inherent risk for brief water spouts and weak, short-lived tornadoes. Not out of the question. That's good to hear, Annie. Appreciate you guys. All right. So again, flooding rates. Before we get off of the HER model and look at some of the other ones, I want to take a second and switch over to the total precip associated with this. And again, this is just going to be through Wednesday, okay? Now, to be clear, it's hard to say that Palm Coast and Ocala and St. Augustine will have as limited rain as what we're looking at here on the HER model, and that places near Brevard County and Indian River County and then through, Orange and Osceola and Polk will have that much more. When you're talking about tropical downpours like this, it's hard for the models to pick up on the very mesoscale or very small scale situation. Remember, if you just tuned in, Plant City has had 9 inches of rain this afternoon, right? But when we look at the totals here on the HER, we're starting to get to values of concern, right? Places like Indian River Shores, over 7 inches of rain. Again, does Grant Valcaria only really get 3 and Indian River Shores get 7? No, more than likely not, but we average this. But look at some of the deeper convection here, right, in Osceola County. Now we're getting to a couple of spots at 10 inches. And again, we've already verified this in one area today with Plant City getting the 9+ inches of rain. So it's not far-fetched by any stretch of the imagination. Look at some of these rainfall totals that the model is painting on, right? Again, does Lake Buena Vista get 4 and downtown Orlando only gets 1? Probably not, but somewhere in between. I'm thinking it's a very, very widespread 2 to 4 inches of rain, but the rainfall totals could be astronomically higher. I mean, look what the HER model has between now and Wednesday afternoon here in portions of Pinellas and Hillsborough counties. Citrus Park, Tampa, Brandon. Carrollwood, Dunedin, Clearwater, Largo, Pinellas Park, St. Pete, Land O'Lakes, even towards Zephyr Hills. This is significant potential rain. All right. That ultimately will probably be the story of the next 2 days for us, is just how much heavy rain and flood threat we end up getting. But don't be shocked when you wake up tomorrow morning if you start seeing some flood advisories issued. Flood advisories or flood watches, those are more extended duration advisories and watches from the Weather Service offices to give everyone a heads up that the flood threat is there. When you get into flood warnings or flash flood warnings, that is the imminent, immediate danger of flooding water, right? Flood watch could be issued tonight and last through Wednesday morning, or issued tomorrow morning and last through Wednesday afternoon. Could easily be more than a 24-hour duration. But looking at some of the impressive totals here on this map, you get the idea why. All right, so that's the HER model. I want to show you guys for my other channel. I had this, but I brought it in here. This is the Icon model, the latest one I was able to pull, as busy as I was this afternoon, right? This model has been fairly aggressive, but the European model is beginning to trend towards the Icon, and the European model is really good at what I like to call the homegrown storms. If there's a global model that can pick up on some of this development early compared to others, it is the European model and the Icon. The European model was much more forward thinking with Tropical Storm Chantal over the July 4th weekend than any of the other models. It developed it a lot sooner, had it in the right location sooner than all the other models, right? On this Icon model, you see the 1,014 millibar pressure low right there. That's what was analyzed earlier today. You notice how it doesn't really get much stronger as it tracks right across our state. But then as we get, so again, just is a broad disturbance here, maybe a tropical depression at best, but then it really ramps up as it heads towards coastal Louisiana. The European ensemble members are very much in agreement with that same kind of overall development and movement. They also have it moving into coastal Louisiana sometime Thursday or early on Friday. Now I'm showing you this one because, again, this is steady, continued strengthening, where by the end, as it makes landfall, its central pressure is potentially even below 990 millibars. So you would have a fairly significant tropical storm and associated with that. But everyone along the Gulf Coast needs to pay attention. I'm talking about our Western Panhandle, coastal Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, and even the eastern sides of Texas. There's still a lot of things to be played out here, but the trend over the last 24 hours has been for a higher opportunity for tropical development and some strengthening. Again, all you have to do is go back and look at what has been happening when you analyze, the radar signature and you analyze, the pressure fields, how we have a closed center of circulation now. So all signs point to this wrapping up and becoming something here in the next 24 to 48 hours. All right. Go back over to our radar here. Oh, look at that. They made it orange. Remember I told you guys that we should get a 7 o'clock update from the Hurricane Center? I mentioned that at the top. So there you go. This was just issued, and it's now 40%. That is unsurprising. So that's why our area is now orange. So the last update here is from this afternoon. So there you go. We're up to a 40% chance now. I didn't speak it into existence, but, I follow the trends. And I've been doing this long enough where, you can kind of forward think. You never like to speculate too much, and I never say this is definitely going to happen. But, you guys have known me long enough on this channel where when we're talking about storms and I'm looking them on a radar and I'm like, that probably warrants a severe thunderstorm warning. And a minute later, we get a severe thunderstorm warning or special weather statements. Again, nothing has been trending anywhere but higher in the potential for Invest 93L to become something tropical. Again, the now X, so this is where basically they analyze the center of circulation at 2 o'clock. They're now analyzing it farther south and west. And again, this is still a broad area that has to consolidate at the low levels if it wants to become something truly tropical. I can actually bring on where my system is analyzing it. So it's interesting because we've got basically 3 different analyses. This is my system, this is where the Hurricane Center has it, and that was the position at 2 o'clock. So up and down this trough line, right? And that's what that orange line represents. Again, you have a low-level center, and then you have a mid-level center south and west. But there's a lot of lift in the atmosphere, which is why it's kicking out these impulses of energy, and we've already had these storms. Garrett, I'm with you, brother. I hope so too, man. How you doing? Hope things are well. Garrett from North Carolina. Told you guys we've got a lot of folks who tune in across not only the country, but the world. Jaden from Aruba was watching earlier. Jay, Puerto Rico. So, shout it out. Let me know in the comment section below where you're viewing from, and I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you have a specific question about the forecast, this is what this particular show is all about. Again, I was going to be on live anyway at this point in time, and we did have some very gnarly storms along our west coast. They're beginning to relax a little bit, but I don't want to leave out our friends in Manatee and Sarasota counties as well. But relatively speaking, we're getting a little bit better here. We still have a special weather statement for the coastal sides of Pinellas County. So let me give you the information on that real quick. So Pinellas and coastal Pasco till 8 o'clock. From Bay Pines to near Beacon Square, moving southwest at 25, wind gusts of up to 40. All right, so and we've had a 40-mile-an-hour wind gust in St. Pete earlier as well, not that long ago, really. Now, the one thing that we're going to see with these feeder bands coming in and spiraling in is they will have fast forward movement, right? Some of the storms could train, meaning continuing to redevelop on themselves, and that's why you get 9 inches of rain today in Plant City, which is an unbelievable amount, but that's the kind of moisture-laden air we have in place, friends, and that's the kind of potential rainfall in very few spots, but an overall risk that we have to assess here at least through tomorrow night. Now, these storms will be pushing offshore, but they have good forward speed. They're moving 25, 30 miles an hour. So they're not going to stick in one area too long, but obviously the coverage is quite expansive as well. Additional showers are already beginning to move back into our East Coast, and this will be a trend that will only pick up through the rest of this Monday evening and even into the overnight hours. You can see now that, the low is getting a little bit closer to land. Obviously we don't have radars out in the oceans, but our radars extend a few hundred miles out to pick up, the first few hundred miles off of the coastline. We're starting to see even a little bit more of a twist here with this. So I would expect the convection and development of this to only pick up more and additional heavier downpours coming back towards the East Coast. Thanks, Annie. Hey, Rhea, how are you? Rhea, a friend of Media Mundo as well. I recognize the name. My wife told me, one of your 10-year-old's friends, your son's friends was in the chat earlier saying hi. I was like, no, I didn't know that. Palm Bay Jags fan, could Brevard County get a feeder band tonight or tomorrow from this developing storm? Yeah, I mean, if we want to technically call what we're seeing right now feeder bands, which is just the outer spiraling bands of a tropical system, even though we don't have a true depression yet, but we do have a low-level center, the answer is absolutely yes. I mean, this is basically what that was, right? And man, it really went up hard fast. I mean, rowdy storms in a hurry. So absolutely, to answer your question, Palm Bay Jags fan, that's actually what I was just alluding to, is additional showers spinning in nature, coming back on shore, back down towards Brevard County, Indian River County, Volusia County, Flagler County could be included in this as well, in St. Augustine. Again, at this point in time, none of the East Coast and I've just been keeping an eye out on the weather services. They have not, there's no marine advisories whatsoever, right? We don't have small craft advisories yet. We don't have gale watches or warnings. We don't have even a beach rip current statement yet. And sometimes you get a beach hazard statement, which includes the opportunity for higher than normal tides, beach erosion, dune erosion, just what they're thinking. Probably because this is a very much developing situation, right? It wasn't until a little bit earlier today that this had the potential to become a tropical depression before it moves into our state. Now, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen by about tomorrow afternoon, because the center of circulation moves onshore probably fairly late tomorrow, but will probably exit, again, not a long distance to travel. If I bring up our spatial tool, so, like if we're looking at, okay, how much land is this going to have to traverse across? It's got about 120 plus miles here if it goes from the Tampa Bay area to Brevard County. If it's going at 15, 20 miles an hour, and its forward speed should pick up. I don't know if it's going to be that fast, but let's say 15 or let's say 10 because it makes it easier. You've got about 12 hours of some interaction to land here, right? That means that more than likely it's not going to strengthen much while it's over the state, obviously, although wackier things have happened, but it's probably not going to really limit or disrupt that center enough where it's not going to continue to develop once it gets into the Eastern Gulf. As I've mentioned before, because we do have an inherent twist to the storms, that always comes along with an inherent risk for waterspouts and brief weak tornadoes. Got to monitor that situation as well. We did have a tornado warning earlier, nothing confirmed. Eastern Pasco County, I believe is where it was, but nothing confirmed. But, there was a little bit of rotation embedded within all of this activity. And again, just in the last couple of hours here, to be clear, I'm always watching the situation in Tampa as well. Zephyr Hills, St. Pete, we had 40, even 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts here. South side of Tampa had some good gusts as well. Now, there's some nasty storms. Still have the one special weather statement. The rain is relaxing back into Manatee and Sarasota counties right now as far as the wind, but the heavier rain will persist a bit. And things are quieter right now. I-4 corridor back towards I-95, but obviously starting to see a little bit of shower activity work towards the coast. But great question. Larry, I hope, the sandbag situation is, the problem is that we don't have a lot of lead time, right? This is on top of us. And the other problem is that we're not going to have any storm surge with this, right? I don't think we're going to, could there be a slightly elevated tide? It's possible, but I don't think we're going to see a storm surge forecast sent out. I would be surprised, and if it were to develop, it would probably be like a foot or two, but I don't think so. This is just not that strong of a system. So it's hard to deploy sandbags in areas where you're probably not going to have any coastal flooding. And the kind of flooding that I'm describing here is very localized and could be anywhere in the state. Plant City is inland. They had 9 inches of rain for today. Could somewhere in Seminole or Orange or Volusia counties be that one spot that gets 9 inches of rain tomorrow, or Brevard County? Absolutely. Those are things I can't forecast. Weather Service can't forecast it. Hurricane Center can't forecast it. It's such a localized event, but I can tell you there's a ton of tropical moisture to give us that possibility. And more than anything, it's the widespread 2 to 4 inches of rain. A lot of areas probably knocking on the door of 6, and again, some spots going above that as well. We can start a poll. Let's do it. Now I have to type with my finger because I don't have a keyboard. Okay. Great question. Let's get a poll going. Does the invest develop before moving into Florida? Again, you've got between now and probably mid to late afternoon tomorrow for that to happen. To be clear, the hurricane hunters are investigating this system tomorrow. So we are going to get a lot more ground truth data, if you will, from the source. And all of that information gets fed into all the tropical models. And so, we really start to pick up some really good data from the hurricane hunters and their reconnaissance flights that we feed directly into the models and get a better idea of what's really happening with that center. All right. It's funny. If you ask me, like maybe just a couple of hours ago, I would have probably said, nah, there's no way. I don't think it's going to develop. I'm not so sure anymore. I'm not so sure. It doesn't take much to get a tropical depression. I'd still put it at like 40-60, 40 yes, 60 no, but it was probably 20-80 earlier today and was 0-100 last night. Again, appreciably, it being a depression compared to what it is right now, it's not going to have any other bigger impacts. There could be a little bit more consolidated wind near that center. But, it's just 34 mile an hour sustained winds. We've had wind gusts well above that today in some of these outer quote unquote feeder bands. But jump on into the poll, guys, and let me know. Does invest develop before moving into Florida? I'll be fascinated to know what you guys think. I think it's a great question. I think it's one of those things. Again, this is also what I love to do here. As I close my own chat out, this is what I really enjoy doing about this channel, is that we can chat in real time about this. I'm live. This is all a developing situation in real time, right? And these are the kinds of discussions that we can have on the channel. We'll always talk about the impactful weather, but I knew I was going to be on live tonight regardless, because I knew that this was going to have impacts, and some significant one potentially, through at least tomorrow night, if not even through portions of Wednesday. Hey, Duncan, how you doing? How much of the dry air would move further south? That would be more localized drier air just near the center. I'm not expecting that to have a significant impact because there's a heck of a lot of activity to the north of here. If we bring on the water vapor imagery, and again, my tropical layer just comes on as a preset. If you look up I-95, look at all of that moisture here. And again, with the counterclockwise winds, a lot of that's going to be spinning back in. Relatively speaking, I've seen much healthier looking tropical storms that have had this much dry air on one quadrant of the storm. What I'm more impressed with is the convection that developed southwest of the center and the convection that developed over our area today. There's a ton of lift in the atmosphere with this scenario, with a surface low, right? And then along this elongated trough, another mid and then another upper level low, which is creating a lot of convergence at the surface and a lot of divergence aloft. So a lot of wind going up like this and producing the higher cloud tops and the healthier thunderstorms that we've been seeing. Truly impressive. And we should not be surprised. Let's have a real conversation. We shouldn't be surprised these days about how quickly these things can develop. Chantal became a 60 mile per hour tropical storm before landfall last Sunday. But Saturday night, it was a weaker 40 mile an hour tropical storm. And overnight, not even with the diurnal convection developing in the heat of the day kind of situation, it still tacked on an additional 20 mile an hour of maximum winds. We've seen too many storms lately. Obviously, Helene and Milton would be storms from just last year, which just absolutely went past the bell curve of, development intensity increases in short windows. So, it's hard to say. Now, it still has a lot of work to do to even get started, but once it gets started and gets into the Eastern Gulf, what could it become from there? that's for watching and judging and seeing what the models do. But the models have sorely underperformed with the intensity of these storms. They've done a fantastic job with track. Their tracks have been nearly spot on. Milton's 5-day track was like 10 miles off. That's it, a 5-day window, right? Intensity, I couldn't even hardly show a model last year because they were so far behind where Milton was. And the Gulf Stream is extremely, extremely hot. Now, if you guys don't know, maybe you guys are new to the channel, I have access to all of the buoy data as well. I have access to ships. If a ship has some weather equipment and they are transmitting their weather signal, I can actually pick that up. These are air temperatures, by the way, so don't freak out, but the water temperatures aren't much better. Now, the water temperatures still will come up and down during the day, but to give you an idea that, near Port St. Joe, they've got an 88 degree temperature. Panama City is in at 88 degrees. Here's an offshore buoy, a 3-meter disc buoy with an 89 degree water temperature. Yeah, it's a little bit cooler, a little bit farther out, 74. But again, these can change through the day quite extensively. And it will obviously depend on how there been cloud coverage, has there been some storms. It's just bath water near the Louisiana coastline. Galveston's in at 88. This is an offshore oil rig platform at 85. Actually, that's a buoy. I can bring on the additional oil rig platforms out here as well. So there's a ship, 92. Another disc out there, 88. You guys get the idea. It's not going to be a lack of warm sea surface temperatures to stop whatever that becomes once it gets into the Gulf. What are the currents in the Gulf, Lily? Hot water evaporation, Lily? Possibly a little bit of the latter. We typically have just our general gyre here, but again, this is going to be moving off of that trough line, so just kind of fully expecting it to be east to west. We can look at wind vectors real quickly here on the GFS model. And these are surface. Just want to make sure that that might be out in time, to be honest. Let's see here. I am happy to switch and answer everything. It might just take me a second to load up some of this stuff you guys are asking me, but I love it. Actually, let's get rid of that and bring on that. Go out to about the 18th here. So this is the GFS model, surface-based winds. Right now, again, this system will also be moving through the mid-level environment as well. Not crazy vertically stacked, but into the southeast and southern Gulf. You guys can see here that once this system moves here, you pick up a south wind, and that's why it's getting driven back into, in the models towards Louisiana, maybe Mississippi, maybe East Texas. It's not out of the question. But you can see there's a bit of a twist here in the GFS. And the GFS is actually one of the ones that isn't extremely strong with this system, relatively speaking. Icona European are a lot stronger. Her is even stronger, more in the initial as well. I think the models will start to pick up on what really trended today, and we're going to get some stronger ones as well. Maryland, I don't think it's going to fully develop either. I think whatever it ends up becoming as far as a true tropical system won't happen until the Gulf either. It's just the question is, do we end up getting a tropical depression before it moves in? And 24 votes out of this, 52 yes, 54 yes now, 46 no. Still got some time to jump into our live poll here on CFLW. If you think that this invest is going to become a tropical depression before it moves along our East Coast, you can say yes or no in the comment section below. While you guys are down there, thanks for taking a quick second and liking this live stream. Doing so, and it takes just a very brief second to hit that thumbs up, doing so supports the channel more than you guys think. Obviously, if you haven't subscribed to CFLW and you want these live updates for weather across Central Florida. And again, this is a live only channel. I'm only on when there's impactful weather. I generally do 2 shows a week where we talk about kind of what's ahead. Normally those are Monday and Friday at 1 p.m. Would love for you guys to join me live for those. If you can't, once I'm done, they become recorded versions under the live tab of the CFLW YouTube channel. But I had mentioned it in a post earlier today that I was going to come on regardless at 7 because I thought there was going to be a lot more to talk about rather than 1 o'clock. Of course, I had to jump on earlier to cover some of the severe storms that we had in play. Sasha, there's going to be a little bit of rotation with any of those storms, coming in just because of the actual nature of what we've got with the broad rotation at the low and mid levels. If we take a look at the Melbourne radar, I've got velocity here for you. So what we would be looking at is, are there any red and green areas close to each other, right? Of a tight couplet, bright greens, bright reds. Do not see anything near shore, right? Pockets of wind embedded within some of the storms that are developing, but that looks to be about it. We can loop this up. So there's your look at the Melbourne radar velocity over the last 30 minutes. And again, you can see some of this wind wanting to come onshore. So I would say this, if you live along our coastline from St. Augustine, Jacksonville, all the way down, to Palm Bay and Mickle Barefoot Bay, as these clouds are moving in, you're going to see this kind of broader spin coming along for the ride. Nothing too tight, nothing rotating too fast, but just the inherent nature of all of this as well. Gulf Stream waters, I think, are pushing upper 80s right now. If I'm not mistaken, somewhere there. Again, with this diurnal temperature difference, it's going to be hard. These buoys, they change temperature so much. There's one that just went from, had the rain in the morning and then it got back up to 82. Probably mid 80s. It's got a slim chance over the Gulf Stream to, the Gulf Stream is a warm ocean current along the east coast of the United States. This could feed into it a bit. Probably not significant enough, and it's not wrapped up enough to really make it go crazy, but it's a ingredient in allowing it to have just another variable that's on its side for potential development. Certainly not hindering things, I'll say that. Yes, they are. Absolutely, Richard. Lightning is a concern. Unfortunately, here in the last couple of hours, and maybe they came back on, I had lost my lightning data. And so, huzzah, it might be back. Or maybe not. Thought I saw I had some lightning strikes there. Now I'm sad. Guess not. If you guys didn't know, by the way, the National Weather Service office radar in Melbourne was hit by lightning yesterday. That's why it was acting really funky last night for the live stream. I was getting some data, then it was dropping, then it was coming back. So they're having some data issues, and I have gotten my lightning data back, thank goodness. So they're having some data issues right now. They're trying to get it all back up and running, but from time to time, some of the data feeds are still not doing fantastic. Hey, Chessie, how you doing? Yeah, man, I bet you did. Love all the chat, guys. Make sure I didn't miss anything here. All right. Yeah, Sherry. William says, it's possible that the orange shade area could turn red off the east coast of Florida and develop, so it's 50-50, can't rule it out. I agree with that. Again, all the Hurricane Center is trying to let you guys know and me interpret and us discuss is, in the overall context, what's the chance of this area becoming something down the road? Remember, they do a 2 and a 7 day, right? So in the 2-day forecast, they have it at a 30% chance. It's not different in the color, but in the 7-day, they have a 40%, okay? So even if this area becomes red, it doesn't necessarily mean that development is imminent. What it really means from the Hurricane Center's perspective is that somewhere within this area, and it could even be 4 or 5 days down the road, there would be a high likelihood it would develop. So just because this area might become red tomorrow morning, because we've gotten up to the high threshold for percent chance of development, it doesn't mean it's imminent. It just means that within this 7-day polygon window, the development chance has gotten that high. But it may not happen over us, may not even happen in the Eastern Gulf. Maybe it doesn't happen until the Central Gulf. They don't really delineate outside of the 2-day window and 7-day window of what happens here. It's not like they go 20, 30, 40, 50. You get the idea, right? Obviously, generally speaking, the farther out we go in time with a system like this, the greater the chance to develop. But could something wrap up in a very short order? It's a possibility. And exceed the expectations, if you will. Go back over to the visible satellite imagery, the infrared satellite imagery. I've got the radar data on as well. Again, the actual low now is more here. This was the analyzed 2 o'clock, and my system hasn't updated that yet, but it probably will drift it south and west. The latest that I have, and this would be my weather computer outside of the tropical layer, has it here, okay? And again, it is a closed low. They have it as 1,016 millibar low, but I had it as 1,014 a little bit earlier. It's probably closer to 1,014 if I had to guess, which is nothing outrageous at all, by the way. That is not a very strong area of low pressure whatsoever, but the fact that it's a closed center already is something that should be, looked at. Obviously, these storms are so nasty this afternoon. We had, 500-600 plus lightning strikes in a 15-minute time frame across the state. Those have wound back down, at least for right now. Farrah, where did you hear that? The other parts are coming tomorrow. They typically have a fair amount of redundancy. Sometimes, though, depending on what equipment or what data comes out, they don't have redundancy. Sometimes they borrow from other weather service offices, right? They're a team. So you've got the Melbourne office, you've got the Tampa office, which is in Ruskin, you've got the Miami office, you've got the Jacksonville office. If one of them has an extra something or other that Melbourne needs, they're going to get it from them. So you've got, 3 other areas here. You've got Tallahassee as well. Hopefully they can find what they need to repair their data feeds sooner than later. And I haven't heard of any actual structural damage to the radar itself. So I hope that wasn't the case. That can actually be some of the longest repair times. I've worked in parts of the country, and even here, we've seen this before too, guys, right? Where, there's some kind of wind damage to the radome or some kind of lightning damage to the actual radar site, and you've got a down radar for weeks or even longer than that. Estimate of windward speed of low off of our coast. Right now, the analysis has it at a very stout 3 miles an hour. Now the biggest thing too, I want to be clear, it's a great question, David. We're still basically trying to pick out a true defined low level center. There is a closed low, but there's also a mid and upper level low as well. So it's not going to surprise me if, reanalysis that occurs every few hours depicts this low in slightly different places with a slightly different movement. it should begin to pick up a little bit of forward speed overall in general beginning tomorrow. But it's a great question. Gotcha. Well, if they can get it all back online tomorrow, then they should be good to go. Again, you know, the radar is running. I say that and you guys don't see it right now, but I promise you it is. Let's go back out to our cameras. We haven't done that in a while. A lot of you guys are tuning in, and I appreciate you doing that as well. So, nasty storm earlier today over Winter Garden, western side of Orange County, right? That actually is what started things off for today, outside of the storms that were up in Alachua County. Now, those thunderstorms raced through, really heavy rainfall, really gusty winds. You can see the texture to the clouds right now. So even when things are quiet and you have more of the overcast, you can see that texturization of the clouds. There's still a lot of instability in the atmosphere. And there's a heck of a lot of tropical moisture. Again, this tropical moisture is quite impressive. And that's why you can have 9 inches of rain today in Plant City. You heard me right, by the way. There was 9 inches of rain today in Plant City. Flash flooding, significant flash flooding in portions of Plant City. And again, that is in Hillsborough County. Live look outside to Conway. Again, in the distance, we're just starting to see some of those next feeder bands. More light showers right now, but we'll see if they pulse up off of our east coast. This camera is looking back off to the east. Slight vertical development with some of the clouds, but more flat clouds than anything, you know, indicative of more spotty, fast-moving showers than anything else at this point in time. But could they ramp up? Could they get a little bit stronger as we go through the next, 6 hours or so? It's an absolute possibility. No doubt about that, for sure. Looks like we had a little blip in the Conway cam, so we'll move on. It's back. And then towards Disney. Right now, we're looking pretty good. Lake Buena Vista in the attractions area. Obviously, this is an area where there's always people outdoors. We've got the fireworks displays going off again tonight after sunset. At this point in time, we're looking pretty nice in that area. Not expecting additional storms to develop, at least in the short term. The one thing in this environment, my friends, that I cannot guarantee you is any long stretch of dry weather in your area. When you have this kind of moisture-laden air, it's like, you know, taking a match to kerosene. I mean, it doesn't take much to pop off another round of storms, even between where we have this feeder band activity at this point in time. You know, so you've got kind of one feeder band here, and then a second, much weaker one right now, really spotty in nature. But I've put that into motion. You'll start to see some of that beginning to kind of loop through. Not much. A little bit more cluster of rain on the northern side of the Bahamas right now as well. But if you see these little dots, that means we're picking up intensity a little bit because now we're getting individual cells to refire. But could there be something kind of in between, redeveloping tonight or overnight? It's not out of the question at all. And yes, Farrah, thank you so much for doing that as well. Hey, Florida investor, how you doing? Want some emergency Gulf averages? Oh, absolutely. Eustis, and it was pouring hard. Yeah, a lot of Central Florida investor got hit hard. Lake Mary, just gray sky. That's most of the I-4 corridor right now, Rhea, no doubt about it. But yes, there is a much higher probability that once this emerges into the Gulf, it becomes something truly tropical in nature. I mean, is there a possibility that this somehow even forms while it's over land? That's happened before as well, too. All right. Again, we don't have a large land mass for this to have significant impacts. Maybe it becomes closed here. Maybe it becomes a closed, system with a tropical depression somewhere over the state or just off towards the west, or maybe it develops somewhere here. Regardless, it's not going to have much of a difference in what I'm expecting for us. And I'm going to go over this one more time because I think it bears repeating. First of all, if you have any outdoor plans between now and Wednesday, you might want to have some indoor alternates, right? I'm not saying it's going to be a washout, but we're teetering on the opportunity of it being a washout. You know, I don't want to say it's a washout because we've had extensive rainfall for today, but we've also been able to squeeze out a few dry hours in a row. And for some folks and their plans, you know, that's all they need. So I don't want to sit here and say, hey, look, you definitely can't do your plans for tomorrow. But when you look at the model for your Tuesday and into Wednesday, you can see how wet it's expected to be. With the inherent rotation of our system comes the inherent risk for water spouts and brief, weak tornadoes. The threat is low, but it's also not zero. So got to monitor that situation. We see it all the time, you know, and that is something that is extremely wildly hard to forecast. I have seen the weakest tropical storms produce so many tornadoes, you know, 40, 50 tornadoes. And I've seen, you know, category 4 and category 5 hurricanes that haven't produced one, right? It's one of the hardest things to kind of lead time forecast. You kind of just got to sit there and watch these storms as they rotate in and make sure that they're behaving, right? The biggest overall widespread impact tomorrow is going to be the opportunity for flash flooding, just like we saw today in the Plant City area. When you have this extensive tropical moisture, widespread 2 to 4 inches of rain is likely, but locally higher than that, up to 6 inches of rain. And in some spots, it could be even higher than that as well. I just realized that I had the other timeline on so you guys couldn't see the model timeline. I'll let this loop up one more time. This is going to take you until Wednesday afternoon. But you can see that spin coming back in. Would fully expect to be some showers in the forecast overnight and daybreak tomorrow, and then re-intensifying tomorrow afternoon. Strong to severe storms are possible. Extremely heavy rain, gusty winds will still be the main threat of the severe storm criteria rather than the larger hail. But 40, 50, 60 mile an hour winds accompanying some of this activity as well. Then when we look at, this is an interesting product. This is max hail size. You don't see a lot of blips there, do you? So the good news is hail probably isn't going to be a big issue. Someone mentioned the lightning threat. This is the HUR bottle and their lightning, right? And so you would just expect there to be pockets of a lot of lightning. Yep, Florida investor, believe it or not, I showed the icon model earlier in the live stream. So if you didn't see it, you can scrub back through the timeline and catch it. But we were discussing that earlier. The fact that the icon and the European model, by the way, have this somewhere near coastal Louisiana Thursday or early on Friday. But now we'll get into the actual nuts and bolts. I wanted to show you one more time again. This is the rainfall totals on the HUR model through Wednesday afternoon. And it's not a funny joke, that's for sure. You know, when you're looking at rainfall totals, which are, you know, 9 inches in a couple of areas. Remember, again, Plant City just had 9 inches today. So we can absolutely say that the models are not out to lunch trying to paint on up to a foot of rain or more in a couple of areas. It's not going to be widespread, that amount, but 4 to 6 is going to be a very plausible number for many of us here in Central Florida, right? So we'll probably start to see some kinds of flood watches issued tomorrow, maybe flood advisories. And of course, when we're in the thick of it, that's when you get your flood warnings or your flash flood warnings. Please heed those. They're very serious. You know, moving water kills a lot of people. You know, just don't, you know, those who don't take it serious enough. It doesn't take much to sweep a car off. Obviously, if you're driving, you want to be very cautious, ponding on roadways, situations like that as well, right? And again, this is regardless. If this thing stays the sloppiest, weakest, broad disturbance as it moves across our area, I don't think it changes this much. It's going to be a wet system coming through. This is the most guaranteed of our different hazards, the widespread heavy rain. Again, I don't want to sit here and say these are the numbers you're going to see, but we can broad brush the model and say there's a lot of areas that are above 4 inches of rain, some 6, some even 8 and higher, right? With the ground truth of Plant City getting 9 inches today. All right. Just clear off those numbers. Again, I just have this tropical layer on. It's great for real-time analysis, but it can get really annoying too when you don't want to see that orange all the time. Trying to bring back up the Plant City flooding here. See if I can get it to pop back on. Oh, I know why it's not doing it. Now it should pop on. There we go. Okay, so if you just tuned in, this is the kind of rainfall they had today in Plant City. There are 3 different reporting areas within about a mile radius. One home weather station had 9.38, one weather station had 8.76, another one had 8.66. And then you have a video was posted on social media of fast-moving water roughly a foot deep overtopping both lanes of Trample Road at Howe Branch Creek, which I know that area some, and Howe Branch Creek is not like a small little road. Just east of Smith-Wiles Road, flooding from the creek into, and it goes on from there. Again, 9 inches of rain south of Plant City today. Florida investor got a 1/4 inch of Claremont. Shows you the difference. But it's a heck of a example of the environment that we're in. That some spots hardly got any rain or got a 1/4 of an inch. And Plant City had 9 inches today and has all kinds of flooding. So that's the scenario that we have to play with here. Again, if you guys have a specific question about the forecast, feel free to drop it in the comment section below. While you're down there, thanks for taking a quick second and hitting a like button on this live stream. I appreciate you guys. Again, this is a live only channel. I'm only on live when there's impactful weather to talk about here in Central Florida. Obviously, when we start to get into a tropical situation, you know, I'll come on and have discussions like this. Normally, we do this CFLW, the show, Monday and Fridays at 1 o'clock. The Monday show would get you prepared for the rest of the week. The Friday show would get you prepared for Friday and the weekend. That's for those who want to have a heads up on when I think we could have impactful weather and I could be back on live, or whether things are going to be looking quiet for the next couple of days. I knew this was going to be an active time frame, so I'd already set CFLW, the show, to be live tonight at 7 o'clock. Had to come on earlier today to talk about some of the storms that we had earlier, but wanted to come back on to talk about the fact that we now have the Invest, right, and how the models are trending to a higher probability of this becoming something tropical. And while we were live, we saw the update from the Hurricane Center going from the banana to the orange, from the 30% to the 40% chance of tropical development. That is the large orange swath that you guys see on your screen. Now again, hurricane reconnaissance aircraft are forecast to investigate the system tomorrow. Believe it or not, if they were out there looking at this Invest right now, I could actually plot their information in real time. Over on the Media Mundo channel, which I do for the Caribbean and the Bahamas, and we've done this on the CFLW channel if you joined me last year for coverage of Helene and Milton, we can actually follow the hurricane reconnaissance aircraft in real time as they transmit data back, you know, where flight level, the pressure, the winds that they're seeing, and all of that. It's not complete information, you know, because we're not getting like drop zone information from them, but you get an idea of what they're seeing. Okay. Again, the excessive rainfall is going to be a thing. The excessive rainfall outlook, and I'm just going out the next couple of days, is all there. That means there's just an opportunity for us to fall under flash flooding criteria. So all of Central Florida tomorrow has up to a 10% chance of the flash flooding criteria being met. That's what the excessive rainfall means. And we still have this, again, marginal risk for severe storms, right? The darker green as well. Well, my take on La Nina this season, Florida investor, is that La Nina is actually gone. We are in a neutral ENSO pattern right now. The question is, do we stay in a neutral ENSO pattern, or do we switch back into a La Nina or even a weak El Nino? I think if we're going to get anything, it's probably slipping back into a very weak La Nina. But from everything that I've seen, and there are some really, great tropical meteorologists kind of on like the on the research side and on the academic side who I follow. appreciably, there shouldn't be much of a big impact from this INSO neutral pattern on the overall potential development. There could potentially be a little bit more wind shear than was originally forecast in the Caribbean, which could shut off the Caribbean at least through the end of July. We'll see if that plays out. Notice that the storms that have formed lately, like Chantal and now potentially Dexter, by the way, this would be the D-name storm, are all homegrown, very close to home, if you will, which really, when you're talking about El Nino and La Nina, doesn't really matter as much. It's going to be your tropical waves coming through the Atlantic Basin into the Eastern Caribbean. But it's a great question. Generally speaking, there's a low chance we slip back into a weak La Nina. But again, is it enough in a long enough duration to cause the kind of impacts we saw from last year? I don't believe so. Well, La Nina actually, more than anything, produces very little wind shear in some of the higher environmental areas that could develop, like the western side of the Atlantic and the Eastern Caribbean. And so with little wind shear, these storms can develop more rapidly, and they're generally more intense. One of the things that I actually hang my hat on even a little bit more than talking about La Nina and El Nino is what's called ACE, or accumulated cyclone energy. It gives you one number for the duration of the storms and the intensity of the storms throughout a hurricane season, right? And some of the models were bringing lower ACE values, or accumulated cyclone energy, in the Caribbean, but we're bringing higher ACE values in the far western Atlantic and into the Gulf, all right? Kind of much like the 2018 hurricane season, where you had a lot of storms that gained north latitude before developing and then moving due west. Hurricane Dorian was one of those kinds of storms that sat over Grand Bahama and produced devastation there, okay? That was the analogous hurricane season to what could be potentially developing out of this ACE number, where we here in the Southeast United States and the Bahamas would have a higher than average ACE number for this year, and areas in the Caribbean would be a little bit weaker. But we'll see. Look, you know, hurricane season is long. I remind people about last season's hurricane season. Do you guys remember that between mid-August and mid-September we had nothing? We had 0 storms. It was like a 40-day drought of nothingness. And I heard it every day about how the whole season was going to turn out to be nothing. And then you snapped your fingers and you got Helene and you got Milton and you got up to, nearly 20 named storms last year, and you were above average in all the categories. So there can be lulls, even in the peak of the hurricane season. And when you go through the 6 months, you end up getting about what you expected. But, some drought conditions as far as named storms go, which is fantastic, and other very active periods as well. The more analogous one, Florida investor, and I just want to make sure I get my dates right here. Was 2019. That, when we're talking about this ACE number and where the accumulated cyclone energy could be a little bit higher, which again is just one number, but it's a good metric, right? So that the public can kind of understand, when you look at a full 6 months, not just one storm, where is the potential for the highest opportunity for development and the strongest storms? It's analogous to the 2019 hurricane season with Dorian over the Grand Bahama area as a prime example of one of those stronger storms. And what I mean by that is if we look at the kind of broad perspective, a lot of times the storms take a far low latitude and then track up north, getting into the Caribbean at low latitude and then moving north from there. 2019 season, if you go back and look, and again, I can't paint this on at this point in time, but you will see a north latitude before the Lesser Antilles and then more of a due west track. And it's as it tracked due west into the Bahamas and towards Florida that these storms got strongest. Some of them recurved before the United States East Coast, but the ones like Dorian that didn't were the strongest of the season. And that's the analogous, potential between this season and 2019. Yeah, look it up, Bombo Blast. It's called accumulated cyclone energy. Basically, it gives each storm a number, right? So when you look at a Hurricane Helene, let's see. Okay, let's go back to last year. Hurricane Helene, Hurricane Beryl were both Category 5 hurricanes. Hurricane Milton can be included in this. Hurricanes Helene and Milton, though, were relatively shorter lived than Beryl, which developed east of the Lesser Antilles, went through all of the Caribbean, across the Yucatan, and then into South Texas, okay? So you're going to get high numbers for both for intensity, but because Beryl lasted a lot longer, it gets a higher ACE overall because of how long it lasted compared to Helene and Milton. So it takes into account how strong a storm is and how long it lasts. But I love it. I don't think we're getting off topic here because obviously this kind of comes back into, what we've been talking about. And we are in hurricane season at this point in time, guys. And again, D is the next named storm. It's Dexter. We've got the fourth named storm here. And is this going to be it? Let's go back to the chat. Out of 78 votes, we are absolutely split in half. You still have some time to vote if you want to join our poll. The question was, does this Invest 93L develop before it moves into the east coast of Florida? If it's going to happen, if we're going to get a tropical depression, it's going to happen between now and about tomorrow late afternoon, early evening, before the center of circulation actually gets back on shore. Regardless, I don't think it really matters as to what we're going to end up seeing, guys. And that's just going to be a heck of a lot of rainfall, some gusty winds, some strong storms, and the opportunity to have to monitor some water spouts and some brief rotating storms as well. Again, appreciate you guys tuning in. If you have a quick second, thanks for taking a quick second and hitting that like button for me as well. If you haven't subscribed to CFLW, thanks for joining us. Appreciate the community. I appreciate all the interaction for today. That's why I'm here. You guys have specific questions, you want to chat it up, let me know in the comments section below. We'll go back out to our cameras real quick. If you joined me late last night, and by late last night, I mean early this morning, we were on just before midnight, but past the midnight hour, we do have night vision on these cameras, so we are able to pick up the storms even at night. But dusk is upon us here in Winter Garden. This is looking off towards the west, so we would see sunset here, but of course at this point in time, we're not going to see any of that with the thicker clouds that are across the area. This is a beautiful shot, but we're looking east. This is from the Conway area, just southeast of downtown Orlando. As we look back off towards the east there, and again, you can see some of that gray sky. And in the far distance is going to be some of the coastal showers trying to come back in. But between here and the coast, we are high and dry at the hour. And at the Disney area, again, heading towards fireworks time for our friends there in Disney. And it looks like those fireworks displays will go off without a hitch. It's moving from east to west. Swimming pool company. I like that. We're a swimming pool company. We just are one. Maybe you're the swimming pool company. Love the name. Yes. So everything's moving off from east to west right now. I'll show you guys that real fast. Let's bring on the IR satellite imagery here. Fortunately, now we're at sunset. We're losing some of that. I'm going to take off. Actually, let's just bring on the composite radar. There we go. This is going to be a little bit easier for you guys to see. So again, the true center of circulation, this was the 2 o'clock analysis. And unfortunately, I can't control, we'll get an update here, but the actual center is farther south. It's probably even right about here right now. So there's been a little bit of a south movement along this trough axis. Again, you got a surface trough, you got a surface low, and then a mid and even an upper level low along this trough line. That's why we have all this energy, all this juice in the atmosphere. There's so much lift along this extended line, and it's just kicking all of these storms back in. So these are basically feeder bands that have been coming back in. We saw the first one develop right over the head in the afternoon hours today, and then a second weaker one is beginning to move back on shore. But for the remainder of tonight and through all day tomorrow, all this activity is going to be east to west. Once the low passes to our west, we will actually start to see the rain coming back out of the southwest and eventually back out of the south as we get on the back end of the counterclockwise spin. But because we're on the west side right now, counterclockwise spin, system moving east to west, everything develops north, feeds south, everything pushes off towards the west. We're calling it that. I mean, again, it's not a true tropical system yet, but is it inherent to our developing system? Yes. We actually had a discussion about that earlier too. But yes, I mean, it was tropical moisture, no doubt about it. Enhanced by a bit of sea breeze, right? Still have our sea breezes still in play in the localized fashion, but ample tropical moisture and a lot of lift in the atmosphere. That's why those storms went like that, man. I'm telling you, I was watching it here and we had the littlest shower become a severe thunderstorm in 15 minutes and then die back down in that time. We call those pulse thunderstorms. They're the ones that last 15 to 20 minutes. They pop up, they produce locally severe weather, you know, wind gusts of over 60 miles an hour, a lot of lightning, heavy rain, and then they pulse right back down. Those were some of the storms we saw in the metro Orlando area that didn't last long. They did line up more as they got closer to the west coast. And along that, you had the significant winds that we had. And then you had in Plant City, the 9 inches of rain today. It's unbelievable. It really is quite unbelievable that we had 9 inches of rain today here in Central Florida, but it happened. Will there be any storm surge low-lying coastal for Gulfport, Slidell, New Orleans? Hey, Jacob, how you doing? First of all, Jacob, I worked in Biloxi for 3 years, one of my first jobs in local television, so I know that area well. Gulfport, Ocean Springs, Pascagoula, Slidell, New Orleans. So to answer your question, Jacob, it's too early to tell. I believe Florida Investor just said that. If the models are trending in the direction that ends up holding true, the answer would be yes. But we can't slap anything on that as of right now. Again, the European model, the ICON model do show this system getting into that area. And I've got that ICON model for you right now. Now, this was an earlier run. There should be a new update that I haven't been able to pull yet. But this was one of the first models, along with the European, to actually pick up on the fact that we had a closed center of circulation. So you notice that even here on the ICON, it doesn't really strengthen at all near us, and it shouldn't, even if we end up getting a TD out of it. But once it gets into the East Central Gulf, Wednesday and especially into Thursday. Now, again, let us not focus on any one point at this point in time, but just know that the European model is fairly similar in direction. This is one of the stronger models, bringing the center of circulation pressured under 990 millibars prior to landfall near New Orleans. So we would see some, obviously, storm surge impacts if this were to develop. All right. Now that we have an invest, right? When I see you guys tomorrow, well, I'm assuming I'll see you guys tomorrow. I don't know if you're or not. You know, we'll have the opportunity to look at some of the other tropical models like the HWRF and the HMON and others, European AI. Just, you know, I'll go back tonight and take a look, and tomorrow morning at, you know, what everything is showing. I don't cherry pick. You know, we'll look at a lot of different models and a lot of different solutions, but, you know, I will guide you guys to where I'm thinking, you know, the models might be better at, or the ones that are out to lunch, the ones that are too strong, or the ones that are too weak. But we'll have more data and more information tomorrow now that we have an invest that will allow those tropical models to start. Also, the Hurricane Hunter reconnaissance aircraft will investigate Invest 93 out tomorrow as well, which means we're going to get a lot of ground truth information. And that gets fed directly into the models, right? You know, all of their drop zones and all of their information they're picking up in their flight levels with the pattern that they take. All that information gets put directly into the models to give us even better data. Yeah, man, I was in Biloxi. WLOX. Funny thing about it is I know some people who still work there. It's been a while. It's been a spell. Yeah, Liam says, walked out to Publix drizzling. As soon as I got in the car, it was a downpour. At least you got in the car. I can't tell you how many times I've done the same thing you did, and the next thing you know, you're dealing with more heavy rain as you're trying to walk back out. It depends, Florida investor. Not all of them. But, you know, the European model really looked like it was out to lunch with Chantal, really making it stronger than all the other models. And ultimately, it was the one that verified the closest. Chantal last weekend, South Carolina, got up to 60-mile-an-hour winds and did so in a hurry and did so overnight. Saturday night, it was a 40-mile-an-hour minimal tropical storm. Sunday daybreak, it had 60-mile-an-hour sustained winds. Hey, Marcus, how you doing? It has been raining all day in Miami. Yeah, I was mentioning it earlier that the heaviest concentration of more widespread significant rain was in South and Southeast Florida today, West Palm, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Homestead, on over towards the Keys. And again, one localized area in Hillsborough County, Plant City. If you guys know that area, they had 9 inches of rain today. Again, shows you the potential this system could bring us to go along with the strong to severe storms, especially in the afternoon hours, the inherent rotation with some of these storms, which again, we have to watch out for water spouts. Brief weak tornadoes aren't out of the question as well. Yes, I am, Joe. I was a television meteorologist for 25 years. Worked in Oklahoma City, Orlando were my last 2 big stops. But yes, I am. If you want more information on me, it's in the description of the channel. Florida native, back in Florida, covering weather here. Also have a Caribbean and Bahamas channel as well. Yeah, I'm with you, man. No, I know exactly what you're talking about, Florida investor. H-War for H-Mon, yes. They can. There's the parent ones. There's the halves A and B as well. Is there a Kelvin wave off Florida East Coast? Not that I'm aware of. To answer your question, Jacob. Bombo Blast, I love it. Just gives the slot machine. Yeah, I know. Boy, as a youngster, that was a youngster who was very poor. That was a temptation I had to avoid. Who's retired? I'm not retired. Brother, I am working harder than I ever have in my life. I don't know if you're talking about me, Liam. This is kind of a second career, if you will. But retired, I am not. If you're prepared, the only thing to worry about is flooding. I'm in Palm Bay on the river. Yeah, I agree with that. With this system, right? We aren't talking about one that's going to have an inherent storm surge for our East Coast. Could there be some rip current risk? Could there be some minor beach erosion? You know, could we start seeing some beach statements that highlight that? It's a possibility. Could there be small craft advisories? Yes. Probably not going to hit gale warning criteria, but it's not a question for the offshore waters in the Gulf Stream. Those are all possibilities. But as far as any kind of real wall of water coming, absolutely not. No. So I agree with that as well. You can see some of these showers just beginning to redevelop in Brevard County. It's kind of the next leading edge of this activity spiraling its way back in. You know, will it pulse back up? Probably not as intense as it did this afternoon, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some pockets of heavier downpours associated with this, some lightning, and then, you know, again, tomorrow, late morning into the afternoon hours, all bets are off again. Because as this low gets closer, there's going to be even more juice to play with here, right? And so tomorrow afternoon could be rowdy again. You know, not only could we have widespread heavy storms as far as rainfall goes, but the opportunity for some strong to severe storms as well. Okay. Hi, Laura. How you doing? Geneva, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Do we have any MB measurements on this yet? The surface low was around 1014. This invest says it was 1016, but I saw a surface chart at 1014. You know, real-time updated analysis. So I think it's 1014. Is Icon the AI model? No, that's the European model, European AI. Thanks, Guy. How you doing? I appreciate you. I'm a Crystal River native, so I grew up on the West Coast. My whole family, my dad's whole family, Bradenton, all of my siblings live in the Tampa area. I visit all the time. We used to have a sailboat there in St. Pete. Know the area very, very well. Central Florida is my home, guys, just so you guys know. I have worked around the country, but I was born and raised in Crystal River and moved back now about a dozen years ago. And, so I know this area intimately, which is one reason why I wanted to start this channel. Again, I do a couple of other channels as well. This channel is a newer channel. I think we have somewhere around 1,200 subs. If you guys want to go to the homepage of CFLW and take a look at the other work that I do and support the other channels, one of them is called Meteorologist. I do tropical forecasting for the Caribbean and the Bahamas. I think we have over 53,000 subscribers to that one. And I do another one, which is even newer. It's called Weather Express. It's a daily 5-minute forecast across the United States. So, instead of this longer format here, I talk as fast as I can for 5 minutes to get you guys kind of a broader view of what's happening across the country. Because, what ultimately happened is I had a lot of people who watch the Media Mundo channel or who watch CFLW who don't live in either the Caribbean or in Florida who said, Rusty, you're going to cover my weather as well. And the resource that I have the least of right now is time. So I tried to find a way to provide that forecast, but doing so in a way that would work for me, but a way that works for you guys as well, because there are other, longer format United States channels out there. But if you want that quick, here's the highlights, 5-minute forecast with this great weather system that I have, and it can do a lot of things. If you want to check out one of those Weather Express videos, you can see how fast I can rip through while still giving you guys a clear and concise forecast in just 5 minutes. I literally have a clock at the bottom of your screen. I love it. It's kind of a fun channel to do. Can I link those in the chat? There should be, if you go under the chat and you look at the videos about, and then you'll see actually buttons, Media Mundo, Weather Express, those are the channels right there. But you could just Google or search in there Media Mundo or Weather Express. Thank you, Farah. I'm kind of looking at the administrator side of the chat. So when you guys ask me specific questions about what you can see and what I can see, it's like slightly different. And I don't want to tell you that you should be seeing something that you're not. But as Farah said, the link to the others are in the description of this live. So if you look underneath the actual video and I think you expand it, you'll see a lot more about the channel, and then you'll see links to the other channels as well. Also our Facebook, our Instagram, things like that, especially for the Media Mundo side. You got it. Time, what's that? Nice. Okay. So again, I appreciate you guys joining me tonight. We had our severe weather earlier today. The showers and the storms at this point in time have behaved much better, but I've got that loop up. By the way, there was a very brief tornado warning today in Pasco County, right here at about 5 o'clock. Ridge Manor area, just west of Dade City. And I bring that up because that's the kind of inherent rotation that we have to watch out for. Somewhere embedded within that line, there can be a little bit of a spin up. And as this system pulls into the state, it's, again, not a zero chance that we have some water spout activity, that we have brief weak tornadoes. It's one of the hardest things to forecast ahead of time. It's more real-time analysis than anything else. Just literally watching the storms that are moving on shore and rotating in to see if they have any signs of low-level rotation enough to produce a tornado, enough to produce a water spout. Pat says, how trustworthy are you? Most have been wrong. You guys can let them know in the chat, I suppose. I stand on my background, that's for sure. But it's a great question. Trust is earned, not given, right? Well, I worked in Oklahoma City for 10 years as well. So if you want to talk about I'm sorry, for 7 years. So if you want to talk, it felt like 10, if not 50. If you want to talk about getting your, cutting your teeth in the severe weather capital of the world, I, did that. But obviously being a Florida native, I know a lot about tropical weather. I've had a passion for it for a really long time. Yeah, while you're here, thanks for hitting that like button and subscribing as well. I appreciate you guys. How worthy are you? I'm not worthy. No, I hope I am. It's a hard question to answer, right? You say I do my best, try to tell it like it is, not overhype it. Another day. You're welcome, Rhea. Rhea, a friend of both Media Mundo and here on CFLW. Appreciate you tuning in. All right. Oh, I know. I just like the interaction. It's fun. Being a TV meteorologist for 25 years, it was what I missed about it. Because, first of all, I've been live now for, I don't even know how long, right? Close to 2 hours. You get like 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes, and it always felt like you were always missing something. Then it always felt like you weren't sure what the viewer wanted. You hope and you thought and you were told by consultants what the viewer wanted, but you never really knew, right? So, having the ability to do this on this digital platform and discuss with you guys is a fantastic thing, right? That's what I enjoy. Now, all right, so Pat says, how trustworthy are you? Most have been wrong. And then Pat asks, how's Bradenton, Florida doing? Pat, my dad's entire side of the family is from Bradenton. Does that make me more trustworthy in your eyes? My dad was born in the 40s in Bradenton. So I have so much of my dad's family in this part of the state. Again, I grew up in Crystal River up here, so I know the area well. So Pat, if my family being from Bradenton gives me any trustworthiness, I'm going to use that as a chip. How does that sound? You got it, Jacob. Thank you. We hope to, and it's a great question, Liam, have storm chasers available. It obviously is a part of the potential growth that we could do in a variety of different ways. We have more live cameras that we're beginning to roll out, that we have right now, that we own, that we control. But we have access to others as well. If you guys know the Media Mundo channel, we have a partnership to be able to pull some cameras from the Caribbean. And during times of heightened weather, we might be able to tap into some of those cameras as well. So we're doing, all we can to give you guys the most extensive coverage we possibly can. Have the live cameras, down the road, hopefully have some storm chasing capabilities as well live. It's always a little bit tougher here in Florida, man. Unless you're talking about a tropical system, it's not like in the plains where you have low precipitation thunderstorms. So they're very easy to see and it's very visually appealing to have storm chasers on them, right? Because of the, low precipitation cells, you get those nice high bases and you can really see the tornadic activity developing. It's not what happens here in Florida. These circulations are wrapped in rain. But when it comes to tropical systems, absolutely. And, we take your feedback very seriously, the things that you guys want to see. And, we look to improve the channel as we move forward. And if you guys want to help improve the channel, a couple of things you guys could do for me right now. Hit that like button and subscribe. Believe it or not, it does more than you think. It doesn't cost you a dime, just 2 seconds of your time, because the YouTube algorithm loves these interactions. The more you like, the more you subscribe, the more you talk to me, it's going to recommend this channel to people who don't even know we exist, right? The other is support our sponsor, the Lean Law Firm of Central Florida. Bobby, Lean, and the team have a lot of faith in us and, are supporting the channel, being a sponsor through the end of the year. Happy to announce that they're going to be the sponsor through the end of the year. And when a storm moves into your area, you get any kind of damage, go to leanonmelaw.com if you would like more information and to support someone who supports us here. You got it, guys. Abby, it's tough to tell. You know, we've got to wait and see. The models are trending it into the north central Gulf, but from here, you know, without a true center of circulation to develop as of yet, there's more questions than answers. It's as simple as that. You know, the models are trying to paint it a little bit closer to Mississippi or Louisiana down the road, Thursday, Friday, but we've still got a long ways to go from there. The Hurricane Center, if we put back on this area, by the way, if you're just tuning in, we've now upped it from a banana to an orange. We're now up to a 40% chance. And again, notice that this area is east of the state. The Hurricane Center is saying it's not a 0% chance that we could get a tropical depression east of Florida. Still highly unlikely, so much more likely in the eastern Gulf, but there's a potential. And then you can see that where its development area goes, notice that it skirts the I-10 corridor, right? Most of the models have this kind of hugging the northern Gulf as it moves off towards the west. But in a general sense, it should get stronger and stronger the deeper into the week that we go. But great question. Thank you, Annie. Thank you, William. Appreciate you. Thanks, Jill. I hear you, Abby. It would be an additional dire situation for the hill country of Texas if more tropical moisture comes back in. I don't want there to be any kind of damage anywhere, right? You know, it's never been my goal here is to, you know, latch on to the hype of all of this stuff, but we don't want areas that have been plagued so hard already to get something additional like this. You know, the models try and bend it back in well before, so we don't have it right now, you know, diving into South Texas where it could get back into the hill country, but I can't tell you that it's definitely not going to happen. Okay, so here's what we're going to do, friends. I think we're going to wrap up this live stream. Again, enjoyed talking with you guys tonight. I appreciate that we had an opportunity rather than just digging into severe weather, right, which is a lot of times why I'm on. You know, as soon as I jump on, we've got some severe thunderstorms to cover that. You know, this activity, while strong and was worse earlier in the day, moved off the coastline and gave us an opportunity to really chat about what this system could end up doing, right? So the situation is going to be this. I'm going to be monitoring this, obviously, you know, from here on out. This is a live only channel, so you're not going to get like a video forecast from me. But the next time that the storms ramp back up, you know, I'll be jumping back on. More than likely, that's going to happen sometime tomorrow, probably earlier than later. We'll monitor the situation. I'll be back on. I think regardless, you know, even if the storms have behaved a bit, as we get into tomorrow night, we're going to probably have a flood threat to have to discuss and exactly what's happening with this. So more than likely, I'll be jumping back on at some point in time tomorrow, whether it's covering severe storms or potential rotating storms that are moving into Florida, and we really have a lot of what's happening right now kind of discussion, or whether we're getting into how this is going to continue to influence us in some of the flooding. I think that there's a high chance I'll see you guys back for tomorrow at some point in time. That's why it's a great idea to have the notifications on for this channel. Again, the notifications is that bell icon, and then you have a subcategory of what notifications you want from CFLW. I do recommend the all notifications, and the reason why is because this is only a live channel. When you get a notification from the channel, you know it's something important to tune into to see what I'm talking about, right? It's not just going to be a forecast update. It's not just going to be some generalized weather discussion. I do a Monday and Friday show at 1 o'clock, generally speaking, called CFLW Show to get you guys prepared. But outside of that, any other time, it's going to be about what's happening here and now. All right, friends, as we leave for this Monday night, thanks for taking a quick second and liking the channel and subscribing as well. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Fantastic conversation with you guys today. By the way, as we wrap up our poll, 54% of you think that this invest is going to develop into at least a tropical depression before it moves inland into Florida. I'm like 40-60, like 40 yes, 60 no. But again, I'm higher than what I was based on what I've been seeing for today. But I think we're going to have a lot more clarity into how this is going to impact the East Coast and all of the state by tomorrow morning. Tomorrow is an impact day, friends. Get prepared for a lot of heavy rain, tropical downpours, gusty winds, a lot of lightning, again, potential flooding conditions through some of the state. I'll keep you guys updated. Thank you so much for trusting and coming in and joining us for CFLW today. Again, please remember the CFLW is sponsored by the Lien Law Firm of Central Florida, your hometown homeowners insurance attorneys. They offer free consultation and policy reviews, anything that could impact your property, hail damage, wind damage, hurricane damage. They'll walk you through every step of the insurance claim process. It's lienonmelaw.com if you would like more information. Friends, until I see you again, you take care. I'll see you soon.